So as I'm sure you were notified on your screens, this webinar is being recorded, and I can share more about that in just a moment. I just wanted to make sure you were aware. Alrighty. Well, it looks like we have a good group of, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Good number of folks with us already this afternoon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started as we are after 1 o'clock. Thank you everybody for being with us. Our webinar series, I am so sorry, my screen is being extra sensitive today. Our webinar series is generously sponsored by Virginia Housing, and we hold the Governor's Conference on Aging webinar series every fourth Tuesday. I can share more in the chat as our presenters start speaking this afternoon about upcoming opportunities in the webinar series. And this is our website here where you can find links to previously recorded webinars, more information about the conference in general, and any news that may pertain to our group. So today I'm really pleased to announce that we have Joyce Nussbaum of Valley Program for Aging Services and Amy Homan DePoy of Cardinal Care to present Inspiring Confident, Competent, and Compassionate Caregivers. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves further, but I just wanted to run through a couple of housekeeping items. So we really do encourage questions. Please submit your questions through the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box. This will just help us keep track of all inquiries. Feel free to use the raise hand feature during the Q&A portion if you'd prefer to ask your question out loud. And the chat box will remain open if there's ever an opportunity for an open-ended discussion, or if you have any logistical or tech issue questions, feel free to DM me there as well. We'll have a polling question embedded in this webinar, and so that should just automatically populate on your screens. It's pretty straightforward. And as I mentioned a couple of times, this webinar is being recorded. In the chat box in just a moment, I will, along with the website link, I will also drop the link to the YouTube page where you can find this webinar posted in about, give or take, 2 to 3 days. But otherwise, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I will be handing it over to Amy and Joyce, and I think we have a great presentation ahead of us. Oh, Joyce, looks like you're
There we go.
mute.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us for this presentation. Amy and I are very excited about this, and I will go ahead and get started with the VPAS portion, and then Amy will jump in a bit later. So before we move through the presentation, I wanted to start with a quote from one of my caregivers just recently. She's probably participated in maybe 5 or 6 support group sessions. And she came this last time thanking us for the support group. And she said, what I realized is even though my mom is not going to get better, I am. And that was her way of sharing with us that the support group was really, really helpful. And so why is it important for us in whatever our role is in our work and in our home life, in our community life, to inspire and support caregivers so they can be confident, competent, and compassionate? There are so many issues surrounding the discussion of being a caregiver, role confusion and identity shift, where everything is changing in our relationships and we're not quite sure what to do. Anticipatory grief and loss with care partners, the loss of dreams, giving up what you had hoped for, what you thought would be part of your relationship, loss of control or perceived control. Those all come up in discussions. Also, exhaustion. Caregivers have a hard time being confident, competent, and compassionate when they're exhausted. And we also talk about exhaustedness or exhaustlessness. And that is a condition where someone is exhausted but also restless. They can't rest because there's always something else to do, that feeling of never being done. Competing responsibilities, family dynamics can play a role in this, as well as culture. In different cultures, as families are blended. And then ambiguity. What is the definition of a caregiver? Am I a caregiver if I pay their bills, or do I have to be giving them a bath? What makes me a caregiver? And sometimes this is sudden and you know you're a caregiver. Something happened and it's very clear. But most of the time it's progressive and subtle and emerging. And all of a sudden you realize, yes, I am a caregiver. And oftentimes it comes at a price because it has come on so slowly that you haven't taken the time, a person hasn't taken the time to learn what it really means to be a caregiver. So if you go to the next slide, please. I wanted us to take a look. First of all, I tried to make a list of best caregiver practices, past and present. And this is not an exclusive or exhaustive list. And it's also something that you can add to as you give thought to what might be your reality or the reality of the persons that you work with. But how has caregiving evolved? What can we keep from the past? In the past, we had a lot of multi-generational living. And I'm actually hearing about more of that again. But now caregivers have more options for care than we did in the past. What are the positive opportunities for us to look at the culture of family responsibility that came from the past, and also recognize that responsibilities might look different now, but we still feel responsible for each other? The size of families has made a difference in that as well. What positive changes have we made to meet current needs? So think about when my grandmother was being cared for, she was in the home in all the activities, but she just sort of sat in the corner and watched. Whereas now we talk about person-centered care. And what does it mean to help somebody feel like they are relevant, that we're focusing on what they can still do instead of maybe what they can't do anymore? And how can we blend these models together so that we take the respect that elders were treated with in the past and find creative ways to show that respect even now? To acknowledge that wisdom was passed down through the generations before, and it still is, but how can we be innovative in how we accept that wisdom, and then include innovative practices and technology to make those connections and to keep our older adults connected with younger people? Also, community support oftentimes was more prevalent. There was more extended family support. So often now we hear about people who are caregiving, but their family doesn't live nearby. They don't know their neighbors. They're not associated with a faith community or other community organizations. And so now they need more support groups and education from places like area agencies on aging and other organizations who might provide care. So the pendulum swings back and forth, and we have to find our middle. And the middle, or the blending of past and present practices, will look different for every caregiver and every family. Next slide. I wanted to just give you two quick stories that sort of focus on person-centered care, interdependence. So not always thinking about one person as a caregiver and one as a care receiver, although it does happen that way often. The first picture is of me and my mom at my college graduation about 15 years ago. And my mom was a caregiver almost her whole life. She was the oldest of 9 children, and then her parents required care, and then she had 9 children, and then my father required care. So when she came to our home, she lived with us for 10 years and passed away at age 93. She still grieved that she had not been able to finish high school or go to college, but she supported me when I decided as an adult to go to college. And so I cared for her, she cared for me, and we shared my graduation. It was just a beautiful story that reminds me that caregiving never ends for some people. It's part of their life. And I was privileged to share caregiving with my mother. So I want to share that story, as well as the picture of the two gentlemen. They're part of the Pickers group at VPAS. They practice music and then they provide concerts. And one of these gentlemen started the program and was very active in promoting it and sharing music with a lot of people. But as his health declined, he wasn't able to be in charge anymore. So the other gentleman took charge. But when I went to the first concert that I saw them together, I actually cried because it wasn't that one person took over and the other person was left behind, but there was so much dignity and respect. And what can you do rather than let me do that for you? And so they allowed the former person to be in charge as much as they were able. And it was just another beautiful picture for me of what it looks like when we're interdependent, when we give dignity, when we provide respect, and we don't always just define our roles as just the caregiver or just the care receiver. Next slide. The other piece of promoting and creating confident and competent and compassionate caregivers is recognizing what it might mean to be a caregiver. And I created this picture a while ago to help caregivers understand that there are so many parts of the day and there are so many hours in the day. But if you fill them all up, even though it all comes from a place of love, you can't really do what you need to do well because you're not caring for yourself first. So competent caregivers might think that they can get all this done, but then the compassion goes away. They have compassion fatigue. They get exhausted. They can't do what they need to do. And so oftentimes we tell caregivers, please take a look at your day, think about what only you can do, and make that list your priority. And then think about ways that you can engage other people in helping you to be a better, a more compassionate caregiver by taking care of yourself first. Next slide. I want to share with you just briefly about VPAS caregiver supports and dementia education programs. It has been my privilege to help develop a lot of these programs, and we have other staff at VPAS who implement these programs. And I'm happy to answer more questions specifically, but I did want to highlight our intergenerational respite care program. And this is a program that we provide in partnership with James Madison University and Bridgewater College, where Kathy Geis-White teaches a class and helps students become more educated and more informed so that they can go into the homes in pairs and provide respite care for someone so the caregiver can leave for 2 hours, usually once a week through both the spring and the fall semesters at JMU and the fall semester at Bridgewater College. And the stories that I read from the students, the stories that we read from the families, it's just amazing how this intergenerational care can be so life-giving and so important. Also, if you're not familiar with Opening Minds Through Art, I encourage you to check into that if you have interest in somebody who could lead it. It's an art program for people with cognitive challenges, and the joy and the conversation that comes from these programs is just really tremendous. I encourage you to check into that. We have a lending library that includes both books and dementia care kits and caregiver kits. So a caregiver can check out a book about caregiving. Oftentimes they look at the book long enough to decide if they want to buy their own or not, but it's a great program, a great opportunity for people to borrow those things as well as games and self-care items to see if it really works for them before they actually make the purchase. And then prepare to care is the last thing that I really want to highlight here. This prepare to care workshops came out of our Dementia Friendly Initiative, and we developed a workshop where we show videos where we recorded somebody acting as the caregiver and somebody acting as the care receiver, and showed situations or behaviors where the caregiver reacted maybe in a typical way and then reacted in a way that might be better or more productive or more helpful. And then we can have conversations with caregivers about how that looked and how it might look for them. So we're always evaluating our programs and trying to look for what might be more helpful. But these are some of the caregiver and dementia education programs that VPAS has. Next slide. Just a few other things that were put into the description that I want to follow up on. We do have our caregiver conference every year, and this year it's November 5th, and it is in Wares Cave at Blue Ridge Community College. In March, we do No Senior Eats Alone, and that is not just for caregivers. That's just our focus on the value of older adults and how lonely mealtimes might be and how we can encourage others. That is also the purpose of our Sock, Soup, and Sunshine. So about mid-January, we start collecting socks and soup and make cards for people. And then these are delivered to our Meals on Wheels recipients. And oftentimes it's our cafe members who package these together and get them ready to go out. So another way of just sharing sunshine with people outside of our caregiver group. I'm going to go ahead and ask if you would move to Amy's presentation, and then we'll come back to the last slide on this one, if that would be possible. Amy is joining us as an amazing partner with VPAS. And I think it's so important for us to remember that we can't do anything alone as well as we can do it together. So just like caregivers need to be interdependent, agencies need to be interdependent. And I wanted to showcase what Amy does in our community and for our caregivers. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Joyce. I am so happy to be here. My part of the presentation is going to talk about the importance of having a home that's accessible, a home that's inclusively designed, and knowing community resources that can reduce the stress on a caregiver and help caregivers to feel more confident and compassionate and competent in what they're doing. Just to start, I'm Amy DePloy. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been an occupational therapist for 30 couple years. The biggest thing to know is that we are no longer Cardinal Care LLC. We are the Pivot Point Group, and you can see that with our temporary logo. We've had a lot of confusion with our name being confused in the last year and a half with the state's newly branded Medicaid system, also called Cardinal Care. So just last week, we finally decided to make a change. So we are the Pivot Point Group, and I am hoping that this adds value to each of you today. I'm going to start with just talking about the importance that I find for a solid network of team members, a contractor, an architect, a designer, maybe a handyman. And of course, I'm going to lean toward including an occupational therapist on your team for accessibility and home modifications to make life easier for caregivers, as well as clients, our loved ones, because I feel that it's important to understand the value that each of us on the team can bring, but yet the difference. And I'll highlight that a little bit later in two individual stories. When you're choosing someone to be on your team, of course, it's best to go with people that you've worked with, that you have experience knowing, that you know are solid, they have the skills and the knowledge that you're looking for. And there are some credentials that you can consider, and I've listed those on the right-hand side of the slide. You might be most familiar with the CAP certification, Certified Aging in Place Specialist, and that's provided through the National Association of Home Builders. There are many others. This is just a short list. Some of these are for people from all career fields. Some of them are specific just to occupational therapists. But also know that having this credential does not necessarily mean, or lack thereof of this credential, doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're working with or choosing to work with doesn't have the skills that you might be looking for. I took the CAP certification several years ago, and it was helpful, but oh, do I have a message? No, I'm sorry. It was helpful, but what I found in that coursework was that occupational therapy is mentioned several times as a provider, a valued member of the team, and it didn't really lend itself to adding more information to my background and my experience. So I've since let that certification expire. But there are folks in the field, occupational therapists, that have a solid amount of information and skills in accessibility. I begin my assessment with a phone call. It's very important to I'm trying to paint a picture. I'm trying to clear up the blurriness of a picture. So I want to introduce myself as an occupational therapist, explain what that might be, and answer questions about that. I also explain my role as an OT. Sometimes there are concerns when folks hear that we are coming out to do an assessment. They think it's an inspection and there are going to be rules. There's some sort of enforcement policy. And so I try to quell concerns about that and explain that no, I am here as a team member, as part of just a group that is hoping to help ease your concerns and your worry about how your home is not working for you, how we can make it safer and help you and your loved one get along with less fear and more feeling secure in your environment. I also find that it's very, very important for me to understand the family's awareness of their loved one's medical condition, the prognosis. Is this something that they're understanding across time? For example, I might be interested in recommending a ramp at a doorway, but in my conversation, it might become clear that this family really is not understanding that there's a point in the near future that their loved one might need a ramp. So that would be a conversation that we would gently approach and tease apart to educate and provide some resources. The next thing would be to understand what the family is thinking about the reason for the assessment. Who sent me? Why am I here? That's often a question. And what's going to happen with the results of this? Again, there are no pass fails. This is not an inspection. There are no home accessibility police that are coming out to say that this is safe or not. I also like to identify the family's goals. Are they looking at a long-term renovation, or is this something temporary? Is grandmother coming to stay for a few weeks after a hip replacement, or is maybe grandmother coming to move in for the long term? That's important. Another important piece is the budget and price point piece. Some folks are concerned about this home modification assessment or home safety assessment because they anticipate that it's going to be very costly. And again, at the end, I'm going to show you an example of a very cost-conscious option. And then I like to identify their support system. Do they have folks in place? Maybe a handyman in the family. Maybe they have a grandson that is good with power tools. Maybe they need some transportation to go pick up equipment from a local loaner closet. So we talk about support system. My observation, my assessment begins as I approach the home. It's not waiting until I get there, but it's on my approach. So as I'm driving there, I'm looking at the driveway. I'm looking at the carport. Maybe there's a garage. Maybe we're leaving the car in the driveway or exiting the car in the driveway and navigating a sidewalk. Are there uneven spots in the sidewalk? Are there trees or debris in the way? And what does the threshold look like at that home, at that entrance? The main goal for assessing an entrance is for egress. How safe is it and how easy is it for a caregiver or an individual to get out of the house should there be an emergency? So this is a primary focus for my assessment, is an egress route. We consider the terrain. Is it gravel? Is there a steep grade? What's the lighting like? Is it exposed to weather? Might a ramp or stairs or sidewalk be exposed to snow and ice, or maybe even just rain, and have difficulty getting a client, a patient, a loved one in and out of a car? Is there hand support? What does the threshold look like, as I mentioned? So these are three pictures of some visuals to highlight the points that I'm looking at as I approach a home. As I enter the home, I start to look at the interior of the home. Doorways, thresholds at the main entrance, thresholds between flooring, between maybe the vinyl in a bathroom and the hardwood in a hallway, or carpet, whatever it might be. And I look at the most often used areas of the home, which are listed here. These are the areas that we most frequently use in our home as a caregiver and as our loved one. And throughout this environment, I look at some of this on the list on the left, on the right, I'm sorry, is just a short list of things that I consider. The focus is on function. How can I make the space be more functional with ease of function for both the caregiver and the loved one? The picture on the left is an accessible kitchen for a wheelchair user. It's got a roll under cooktop, a roll under sink, low mounted stove, oven, and a low mounted microwave that has a drawer that pulls out, a shelf that pulls out under it, so hot things can come right out of the microwave onto the shelf. There's also a drawer style dishwasher in that kitchen. The second picture of the stacked ovens, it's a great idea. The low one is often easiest for shorter people, for folks from a wheelchair, folks who have reaching difficulties. However, this particular unit is mounted very tall, very high. And so for tall folks, it's great. For those of us who might shrink shorter than we already have started out, it could become a problem with seeing the control panel at the top. And it certainly would be inaccessible for someone using a wheelchair. This would have been a better design had the drawer been removed at the bottom and the whole unit lowered to the floor. This third and fourth pictures are projects that are underway now. This is a bathroom with a glass swinging shower door. It's difficult for the loved one to get in and out of that space. It's difficult for the caregiver to help the loved one in that space. We've talked about some options with grab bars, location of grab bars, style of grab bars. Right now we're in some decision-making time for the color of the grab bar, the style of the grab bar, so that it does not look like a hospital. There are lots of design issues with a bathroom, especially a shower. The curb stepping in is a big one. But removing these doors, putting up a curtain, adding some grab bars, adding a handheld shower head will be helpful for this family. This last picture is an entrance. There are 3 steps. There's a grab or a handrail on one side, but not the other. Having something on both sides would be ideal, and we're talking about that now. The conversation continues in my plan. This is a very collaborative approach. This is not done in isolation. I don't enter someone's home as the expert. I come as a collaborator, resource, a support system, not as the warden, as I like to say. And generally speaking, we talk about the now and the future. What do we need to do immediately now for safety? And as I mentioned before, then we talk about what might be down the road, what might be a progression. But the immediate needs are often met with these 4 items that I've pictured here. We talk about these. Oftentimes I have some of these in my own supply, so we put them up temporarily, or we get them from a loaner closet temporarily so that they can be used. The experience makes all the difference. Feeling the difference in how it works with and without these items, it really helps families, loved ones, and their caregivers to understand the benefit that they can have. Now, we might also change them out. We might start with one, but we might progress to something else until we get the right fit. And again, the occupational therapist's eye and experience is helpful. I can immediately say a certain style chair or bench might fit in a shower, whereas another style will not. So we outline immediate needs versus later needs. We talk about the budget. We consider local resources. And we focus on safety, knowledge, and understanding. This particular picture with the shower head, I just wanted to highlight, oftentimes you'll see a handheld shower head, which is super helpful for a caregiver helping a loved one for bathing. Oftentimes the handheld is on the bracket at the top of the shower where the fixture comes from the wall, or else it's hanging down, just hanging like a fire hose, spraying water wherever it might. Having a lower bracket is extremely helpful. These brackets come as suction cup options if the tile is compatible, or they also come as adhesive options. Another feature is this water diverter button on the handheld. Other features of handhelds that you might want to consider is the weight of the handheld. Not all aging adults can manage the weight of the handheld, and so those would be things to consider. Usually a big part of the conversation is community support. What can we do to help? And Joyce mentioned some amazing services that Valley Program for Aging Services offers here to our community locally. I really, truly encourage person to find the agency in their area, tap into their services, because it's really, really valuable. It's a great resource. It's a great networking option. We can't do everything independently on our own, but we certainly are better as a group putting heads together and resources together. One of the great programs that they have that I send my folks to are their falls prevention and the cognition, memory care, or memory impairment, dementia programming that they offer. It's fantastic. We also offer information about local loaner closets for equipment. And I've listed two here. The Free Foundation has closets all over the state. You can easily locate one near you. And also VATS, they have a equipment networking system as well. I provide a handout for local equipment providers here in our area. Also have connections to in-home caregivers, my own connections that I've worked with, as well as the list that Valley Program for Aging Services provides. And we also have references for contractors that I've mentioned before. We've even done such, kind of provided a service for a dog walker. I had a client recently who had come home and needed 24-hour care because of some balance issues. It wasn't safe for her to leash her dog and take the dog on a walk. So not only did we provide occupational therapy, set up her home for safety, her caregiver was understanding of what to do with all of the things and how to help her. We also found a caregiver and we found a dog walker for her. Now, there is the situation that arises on occasion in which we go to a home, and during our assessment, we can recognize that a family, a patient, a client, the loved one might need some additional therapy, OT, PT, speech therapy, or maybe their condition has progressed beyond what is realistic for a single caregiver in a home. And sometimes we suggest palliative and hospice care, always trying to provide support so that the caregivers are well taken care of and don't experience compassion fatigue, because it's a real thing. Last two slides, my final two stories. This is a story about a gentleman who called us, myself and an architect. We go out to the home, and this gentleman mentioned to us that his 100-year-old mother was going to be moving into his home. And when we got there, he said, "I'd like this bathroom, the shower, to be a roll-in shower." So the architect took a look at the floor joists and so forth and said, well, to remodel this bathroom to make it accessible, it's going to range between $15,000 and $18,000, maybe $20,000. In the course of the conversation, the OT in me had heard the gentleman mention that his mother was using a walker at some points and also using a wheelchair. So I knew that she could transfer. So my recommendation, with OT eyes on, just a different perspective, was that we remove the shower doors. We add a shower bench that she could transfer to and slide in, maybe a sliding seat bench, and also add a curtain and add a handheld shower head on a slide bar or with a lower bracket. And all of that would cost less than $500. And that was the price point and the safety situation that family chose to use. My final slide I call the Buck Rogers family. This is a family of engineers, forward-thinking innovators, and currently they're dealing with some changes in health that cause these steps in their garage from their parked car into their home. These steps are a problem now. They're about an 8 to 9 inch step, so they're pretty tall steps. And in working with this family, we were talking about a ramp. The lady of the house is fearful of ramps. She's had bad experiences on even very low grade ramps. So we knew the ramp wasn't an option. So we were talking about platform steps, and you can see in this diagram that the tread of these steps, which is the part that you put your foot on, the tread is going to be 22 inches. We call these platform steps or walker steps. This allows a person to go down with their walker. And so we wanted to also change the height of the step from the 8 to 9 inches, to only 4 inches. But we have a hot water heater in the way on one side and a water softener and a utility sink in the way on the other side. And because I'm an OT and not a contractor, I needed to pull in my expert contractor colleague to help me know if I should consider moving this hot water heater or moving this water softener to give us the space that we needed. Turned out that the contractor, because he's a contractor, he was able to help me figure out a design that allowed us to change the platform that opens outside the door and add the platform steps coming down this direction. And we had plenty of space for that, for the person to come down the steps, turn, and still access the car, still access the sink and the water softener. So I was hoping to have a final picture for you before and after, but this is just being done. I think the railing goes up maybe tomorrow. So I wouldn't be able to have a picture, and I'm disappointed in that because I wanted to show you that to you. But this is another way that put your heads together, different perspectives, different team players, different people that you trust on your team to help create a space that works for a caregiver and their loved one to help them feel more confident, competent, and have less compassion fatigue. So I thank you. Joyce, shall we go back to you now?
Yes, thank you. If we could look at the next slide in the presentation that I had prepared. So the next one, yeah, there you go. So just putting this all together, I sort of wanted to sum up our thoughts. It's so important that caregivers, older adults, all of us really, seek resources before we need them. Know what's out there. You don't have to know all the details, but so many times we hear people say that they don't need what we have to offer. And they say it with pride until they come back and say, we need it, but now we don't have time to really focus on it. Just tell us what we have to know. So that's really hard. Joining a support group. The quote I used at the beginning, that the person that she was caring for was not going to get better, but she knew that she could because she had support out there for what she needed. That's so important. Being realistic with our expectations. We can't do it all. And other people aren't always going to recognize what we need or even ask. Another really important thing is to think yes and rather than no, you can't. So many times care receivers are told that they cannot do something anymore, when instead it's really important that as caregivers, we say, how can you still do something, until there's a point sometime when we can't do that anymore. But yes and is so much more helpful. And then entering the person's world and thinking about really listening to what they need, what they're asking for, what they're struggling with. And I want to add just a plug here. Amy is going to be at our caregiver conference with some actual assistive devices, and I believe even possibly a cot or a hospital bed to help caregivers really enter the world of the person they're caring for and feel what it feels like to be cared for. So I think that's going to be really exciting. Remember that dignity and purpose are important at any stage of life. So how can we help provide that? And not just letting the person figure it out on their own, but providing resources and trying to figure it out with them. And then caregivers, encouraging caregivers to ask for help, ask for how you can get care to care for yourself. And VPAS is here for that. People like Amy are here for that. And there are so many other resources available. All right, I think the next slide is just our mission and vision, and then moving on to my contact information. And that's all that we have now. We have some time for questions if you have any, and we can revisit anything that we've talked about.
Thank you so much, Joyce and Amy. And again, folks, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A or in the chat box at this stage is fine. A question that I have for you in the meantime, while we wait for any potential new questions to come in, do you have any advice that you might give to a caretaker or even to a family member that wants to make changes to a house or to a place of living, but is facing resistance, whether that be from the patient or maybe other barriers?
That's a
Amy, go
great
ahead.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. That does come up now and again. The way that I typically address a loved one's resistance or concern is just a conversation. We start with a conversation. Usually just being able to ask questions about, I'm wondering if you're noticing that this is hard. I'm wondering if this is a hard part of your day. Are you spending a lot of energy doing this particular thing? Um, Oftentimes, just with an honest conversation, inquiring about how they're feeling about it, they will say, yeah, this is hard. I don't like doing this. This is not working for me. Or I'm fearful. I hesitate to do this task because I'm scared I'm going to fall. So just with a conversation, usually we can tease apart what the barrier might be, what the resistance might be. And oftentimes, too, it's a matter of offering a piece of equipment for them to try. If they think they can just try it, and if they don't like it, they can get rid of it. It's a whole lot easier to maybe consider, oh, yeah, I'll feel that out, than if I say, you have to have this. Or a family member says, now, mom or dad, this is going to be what makes you safe. That feels a little too intrusive, takes over too much of their control. So we just try to open the door with a conversation and offer the experience of the equipment. Or sometimes statistics often help. Sharing statistics about falls and where they happen and why they happen can help for those who are maybe more analytical thinkers than experiential.
I've also experienced that sometimes if a caregiver or a person having a conversation says, is it possible that? And then it's not really a question of fact as much as, is it possible that this would be helpful? So Amy, I love your approach to that. And I think giving people as much control over the discussion and the decision as possible is really, really helpful.
Thank you both. We have a question in the Q&A, and this might not be an answer that you can give right away or without more information, but Carmen McCrae is inquiring about the initial consultation process and specifically what the charge might be.
Good question. That's a valid question. Thanks for asking, Carmen. For us, the first thing that we do is try to figure out if this is a medically necessary home assessment or if it's not. If it's a medically necessary home assessment, then you're eligible to use your insurance care benefits. It's payable through insurance. If it's just something that somebody might be doing to explore creating a space at home that works for them as they age, then that's not a medically necessary, justifiable reason, and that would be private pay. And different OTs across the state and across the country bill that at different rates. Sometimes there's a kind of a package deal whereby, and I offer this as well, there's a package deal whereby there's an assessment come out, see on site. We choose how many rooms. I can estimate how long that might take. And we can then talk about an hourly rate for the on-site, another hour or so for a comprehensive report. And then if there's equipment or anything that we want to set up and train on, then there's an additional charge for that. So it really varies by service and by locality, but might be billable to insurance. So that's always what we try to do. If there's been a fall, if there's the need for caregiver education, there are all sorts of reasons that would make it justifiable for Medicare eligibility.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing a more housekeeping geared question, just real quick. I'll address. Ray Parks is asking links to PowerPoint presentations. Yes, absolutely. We'll be sending a follow-up email to all attendees that will include the recording and the slide decks and our speakers' contact information, because I know that they're happy to be a resource. And it looks like we might have another question that has come in. Yes, Zachary Hollister asks, in your conversations, do you ever run into situations where family and the person needing care are not on the same page? And how do you navigate that in an aging in place scenario? And I think you spoke to that a little bit in the last response, but if you have anything else to add in that regard, feel free to do so.
That's actually not an uncommon situation. Oftentimes I see two things. One is a loved one is unaware of their deficits and the challenges that they're experiencing. And other times they're very aware, maybe not vocal, but very aware, and they are protecting their family members and their loved ones from their deficits. So sometimes I can just feel out whether or not this is a conversation we can have as a group or if we need to talk individually. And that's often where I start. It's just a conversation, getting to know, establishing a rapport, establishing some trust, and hearing what their needs and concerns are.
Thank you, Amy. A question tailored maybe more towards Joyce that I had thought of while you're presenting. Are there any signs that stick out to you of burnout that would be important for friends and family of caregivers that they might be able to pick up on as a third party?
I just had a caregiver recently tell me that after a particularly stressful situation, they felt like a piece of them was lost. They just couldn't care anymore, and they couldn't bring it back. Usually after they rested a bit, they could pull that back up, but they couldn't. And they found themselves distancing themselves from the person that they were caring for. And so I think that friends and family members can watch for that in the way a caregiver talks about their family member or talks about themselves. And also just the usual signs of depression, a person not caring for themselves anymore, not sleeping well or sleeping too much, all of those things that we might watch for. But I think for caregiver burnout and compassion fatigue, whatever we want to call it, listening for the ways that the caregiver talks about their role as a caregiver and the person that they're caring for is really important.
Thank you. Back to the insurance item, Carmen McCrae is asking if you're attempting to bill insurance, how is that generated? Doctor's order, and if so, what should the order state?
Good question. Yes, it requires a doctor's order to be billed to Medicare or to insurance. And the order just needs to be for occupational therapy and typically just simply say evaluate and treat. And it needs to include diagnosis codes like any other order would for therapy.
Okay, that is helpful. A question that we have in the chat, Tamika Gary, and apologies if I'm getting any name pronunciations wrong. How do you locate architects or designers, and how quote unquote open are they to working with an OT?
I love that question. I was married in a contractor family. And so there are contractors that have some background and no background. If you can find a contractor in your area that is CAPS certified, they will have heard of occupational therapy because it's mentioned in the curriculum for the CAPS program. And that's a good place to start. Otherwise, it's a matter of conversations. You can ask questions about their experience. I recently talked to a friend of mine that's a contractor, and the comment was, oh, yes, I make all of the doorways extra wide. Well, I knew right away maybe that's not a fit for me because it's more than just wide doorways, right? So I find contractors sometimes at home and garden shows. It's a great place to meet people and start the conversation. Sometimes word of mouth. There's also locally you'll have oh my goodness, I'm losing a word. The group that local businesses help me, Joyce. The local business.
Chamber?
Yes,
the chamber,
okay, your chamber. The chamber is a great place to get connected and find folks as well. A lot of times word of mouth and looking at, you can actually schedule time with contractors to go and see homes that they've built. And so that's important too. You can actually put eyes on. I hope that's helpful.
I think it absolutely is. Alrighty, well, we don't have any, we have a thank you in the chat. I don't see any other questions, but so I'll wrap up with a few reminders, and if we have a few more pop in the next minute, not a problem at all. We have some time. Thank you so much. I think to Joyce and Amy, I think it's an important conversation, and pairing the caregiving element with well-being of caregivers with this accessibility component, I think is important. And I am grateful for this conversation and to the folks who attended today as well. I don't know if our speakers have any final comments, but a couple of housekeeping items I have before we close out. Just that email will be sent out. VGC Aging is our website page. The next webinar will be held on, I believe, September 23rd, and that will be on civic engagement. We have some openings in the following months for webinars. So if you're interested in presenting, feel free to email me. You can find my information on our website page, and I can put it in the chat box as well with any potential webinar topic ideas or presenters that you think would be a good fit for this series. But I'll hand it back over to Joyce and Amy for any final remarks.
Amy?
I feel honored to be part of the day. Thank you for allowing me to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Reach out anytime.
And the same for me, especially those of you who are part of area agencies on aging and want to maybe implement some caregiver programs. I didn't want to go into great detail today, but I'm happy to have conversations with anyone about what we're doing at VPAS, or if you're doing something wonderful and you want to share it with me, I would love to hear that as well. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Lots of thank yous coming in the chat and notes of great presentation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.